gonna try this side. Maybe don't make these. Maybe don't make these because they're so good that you're gonna wanna make them all the time. So if you love bread, maybe don't. These are so good. Hello everyone, welcome to the Den. Thank you so much for spending a few moments of your day here with me on my channel. Thank you every time you watch any of my videos. I appreciate that so much. And I hope that if you enjoy this video today that you consider subscribing. If you haven't already, give this video a like and select that notification button and select all so that you get updated for all of my new videos. But today we are making rolls. So this is my go-to recipe for rolls, breadsticks, hamburger buns, things like that. It's a very versatile type of recipe, and I use this all the time. I make rolls once a week because my kids will eat their sandwiches on these. I'll do sliders, and so I like to make these at the beginning of the week so that I have them for the rest of the week, and they'll last all week, and they hold out pretty well. I have bread bags that I've purchased from Amazon, and I just store them in there and they last a good amount of time. Actually, today is a week from the last time I made rolls, and my sons ate sandwiches today on those rolls and they were still delicious. Now they do get a little bit chewier as the day goes on. They're not as soft, but they're still good to eat. So we've used up all those, so now it's time to replace them. So I'm going to show you how I do that. And tonight I'm making homemade spaghetti, so I'm going to make some breadsticks along with my rolls. So if you want to learn how to make this, stick around because it's not super hard, and I think that you're really going to like them. They're delicious. They are super good with a cinnamon butter like the one from Texas Roadhouse. My daughter will eat those with the butter on them. She loves them. So these are a crowd pleaser. My family loves them, and I think yours will too. So stick around, find out how to make these rolls so you can make them for your family too. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do when I'm making my rolls is I'm going to get a cup and a half of warm water. You just don't want it more than 115 degrees. And I always tip mine, and if it's, 90-ish to 100, that's fine with me as long as it feels warm to the touch. And I'm going to get my yeast, my isolated yeast, into this water. So let me get that real fast. Alright, so here's my yeast. I just keep my yeast in this jar. This is not the actual yeast, but it's similar to this. And I'm going to add a tablespoon to my warm water here. And I'm going to leave my tablespoon out because I'm going to need it. And then I just whisk it in. Closer. Until it's all mixed together. And then I'll just let this sit here for a few minutes. I know this yeast is good, but I'm going to let it start to bubble just a little bit. 5 minutes or so. So I just mix that up really good. I'm just going to let it sit here. While I'm doing that, I can start getting my flour in my bowl with the other dry ingredients. This is my bread flour tub. I just put my King Arthur bread flour in here. The difference between bread flour and all-purpose flour is this has a higher protein content. It makes your bread a little bit more chewy. You can use all-purpose flour for this recipe and it will be just fine. It'll turn out just fine. But I always use bread flour for mine. But again, if you don't have it, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. So you're gonna need your bread flour. You're gonna need a half stick of butter, a half cup of milk, and 3 tablespoons of sugar, and a tablespoon. You could use more than a tablespoon of salt, depends on how salty you want your rolls, but I say at least a teaspoon. So let's get these ingredients into the mixer, and then we will add our yeast once these dry ingredients are incorporated. So the first thing I do when I'm going to put my flour into my mixer is I fluff it up a little, but I just like to incorporate a little bit of air into the flour so it's not really packed in there. So I'm just gonna do that, and then I start off with 4 cups of flour in the mixer. So I'm gonna get that in there. And I just use the back of the fork I fluff the flour with to top that off. And these are the only ones I measure perfectly, the first 4, just so I have my base starting point. Because after this starts to come together in the mixer, if you have to add more flour, really you're going by touch and by the look of it. So it's not an exact science with bread. And I'm just gonna set my flour to the side here because we're gonna need it. And I'm gonna take my teaspoon that I had from the yeast, and I'm just gonna grab out 3 tablespoons of sugar. I'm also gonna add in a 1/2 stick of butter. That in there. Make sure it's softened. And I'm gonna do a tablespoon of salt. Just gonna use pink Himalayan salt. Now you could mix this before you added the butter, but I'm gonna start mixing this now. And we're gonna also add in a 1/2 cup of milk. And now our yeast mixture will be ready to go in here as well. So we'll put that in there. So here is what my yeast is looking like right now. So you can see it's kind of bubbly on the top. Some of the bubbles there are from just stirring it. But when you can see this like cloudiness here, and you can also smell it. And it smells yeasty. You know it's good. If you want to wait even longer to see it bubble more, just to make sure you can, or you can use a little bit hotter of water. This was only like 95 degrees, so it's going to take a little bit longer, but it's going to be fine. I know this yeast is good yeast because I use it all the time. But if you're wondering about your yeast, wait for it to foam a little bit more and you'll know it's good to go. So I'm going to add that in there, and then I'm going to turn this to about a 3. If it's getting a little out of control, just turn it down some. And when you notice it not wanting to do mixing on the sides, just pull it away all the way around in the bottom too. It's going to be very, very wet, but that's fine. We just need to get this all incorporated so that we can start adding in flour as needed. And then just stop as needed to pull away from the sides. Okay, so this is the point when I have a very shaggy dough and it's very sticky. When you pull it, it sticks to you like that. I'm going to grab out just a cup-ish using my same tool here, my measuring cup tool. It's not a complete full cup because I'm just going to add little bits at a time. And I'm going to blend this again. Alright, you can see here now, if you're watching this, it's probably in fast motion, but it's still stringy on the sides. So as I'm watching this turning, I can still see that it's sticking and pulling away, but still sticking. So I know I still need more flour. Whenever you add your flour, don't start it back up on high because it will go everywhere. So start her on low. Now at this point I can tell I'm still going to need flour, but now I'm going to add in small amounts while it's mixing. And careful as this thing is turning. You don't want to get your cup of flour stuck in there. I'll just tap little bits like that on the side. Down here you can see it sticking to the bottom. When it's done, it won't do that. Like when it lays flat, it won't do that. It's still tacky. Like if I were to pull this apart and try and knead it, it's still gonna really stick to my finger. So it's not ready quite yet. So now to test my dough to see if I think it's ready, which it's very close, and we're at about 5 cups of flour right now. I will let this kind of chill onto the bottom and see if it sticks. That's just how I tell. You see how well as I pull away, there's still some stickiness down there, so I know we're gonna need a little bit more flour. You can see how it's still kind of sticking. So I'm gonna go ahead and add the rest of this. That's about 5 cups of flour right now. We're gonna start it on low and just let it keep kneading. Once we get to the point where I know the dough is done, I'm gonna let it knead for about 5 minutes in the mixer, but we gotta get to the point where we know our dough is ready. All right, so my dough is good, so I'm gonna set a timer. It's very smooth and it feels like gum almost. It's not sticking to my fingers. You can see as I'm pulling it, it's not sticking to my finger anymore, and it's pulling completely away from the bowl. So I'm gonna set a timer for about 5 minutes and let this knead at about a 3. So that's what you're gonna do now. You really want the gluten to relax, and kneading it is what's gonna do that. So let's go ahead and let it knead. Okay, so it's been about 5-6 minutes on this knead, and you can see it's nice and smooth. It's come away from the sides. I know it's ready to go in for its first proof. So I'm gonna remove my bowl. Another good way to know too is that when you pull this off, it pretty easily comes out of your dough. You can just move your finger down and see how it kind of just pulls away like that. You'll still have a little bit on here, but it pulls away easily and it's not tacky. So let's get this in our first proof bowl. Okay, so here's my bowl, and I have just sprayed it with a little olive oil. I just have one of these that I just give it a spray in there. And then I take my dough out and I just kind of pull it up like this. It will be a little bit stuck to the bottom. That's good. But you can see here that it's a nice roll. Smooth, not tacky, not sticking to my hands at all. And I'm gonna throw it in the bowl. And then I just roll it around and coat it with the oil. Throw the lid on like that. You could just put a dish towel over it or a piece of saran. You don't want your dough to dry out. So I don't put it on. I just lay it over the top. And my oven is at about 230 degrees right now. I'm just gonna turn it off. It only takes a few minutes to get up to that temperature. And you can see I just set this on my stove. My stove is filthy, don't look at that. And you can feel the heat. It kind of creates a little bit of a warm environment here. It's gonna help this dough during its first rise. Don't put it, there's a vent here in my stove. You don't want it too close to the vent. You definitely don't want to turn on your burner. And because it could get too hot and kind of like start to bake it. But it's warm right here in this area and it's not too hot. So if your house is already warm, then you don't even have to worry about that. But my house is probably about 62, 63 degrees right now. It's a cooler day outside today. So I'm just gonna create a little bit more of a warmer environment for this bread. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to. It'll just take a little bit longer, which is totally fine. You don't need it. It just helps it to rise faster. So I'm going to give this about an hour, and then we're going to come back and see what it looks like. But here it is right now, and it's just sitting there at the bottom of the bowl. And by the time we come back, it should be up to at least here-ish, and it will fill out too. So see you guys in an hour. Okay, so it's been a little over an hour. And here's what my dough is looking like now. It's come up quite a bit, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna punch this down and let some of the gases that it's created out of it. And you can see that it's gonna puff down some, and that's perfectly normal. And then we're gonna turn this out on the clean counter, and I'm gonna show you what to do next with it. Okay, so my countertop is clean, so I am just going to dump this out here. Just like that. And then I just kind of work it a little bit. I don't put any type of flour or oil down. It's not gonna stick. And I just knead it for just a few minutes. Okay, so, and then I just bring it into just, you know, kind of a ball. So knead it just for just a small amount of time. It doesn't need a lot.
It's nice.
It's gonna rise just fine. I'm gonna just go grab a couple things, and then we're gonna get this rolled out into our breadsticks, and I'm also gonna turn this into some rolls. Okay, so I have a half sheet pan here. I think it's I don't know, it's a pretty big pan. And I'm gonna lay this parchment paper, I'm gonna lay this out, some parchment paper out on here, because this is what I'm going to use for my second rise of my dough. I use one of these to cut out my dough. I don't even know what this is called, a scraper, I guess. And you don't have to have this if you just want to use like a knife or something. If you don't have one of these, that's totally fine. And I use a scale. Now, I use a scale to weigh out in grams. I feel like that's the easiest, most reliable way to get your bread in the right size, so that they're uniform, they rise equally, and when they bake, one is not raw where the other is overdone. So I weigh my rolls out at 50 grams because that's like the perfect size roll for my family, for my kids when I fix them a sandwich for lunch. A 50-gram roll is perfect. It also makes excellent slider rolls and dinner rolls. So let me get my parchment paper, lay that out, and then we'll start rolling these out. So for my breadsticks, we're gonna do about 80 grams, but I'm gonna cut this in half. I'm gonna do half breadsticks, half rolls. So it's not a perfect science, and that's fine. But I am gonna try to get my rolls between 50 and 55 grams. What I do is I take the dough and I start to cut. That's gonna be more than 50 grams. Let me pull this over so you can see it. And I just will cut away until I get my right amount that I want. And as you're doing this, you get better and better at it. So I'm gonna set all of the dough pieces aside. I'm gonna just weigh them all out first, and then I will show you how to roll these out. So let me get these all done, and then I'll show you how I roll them. Okay, so I have all of my rolls here. I came out with 12 rolls, or no, 4, 8, yeah, 12 rolls. So I'm gonna do my breadsticks at around 80 grams, 80-ish. It doesn't have to be on the money, but that's what we're gonna do our breadsticks at. So I'm gonna finish rolling these out, put them aside, and then we're gonna get them going. Okay, so you can't see them, they're a little bit off camera here. I could turn and you can see some of them here, but I have 8 80-gram breadsticks. But first I'm gonna show you how I make my rolls. So I don't roll it out or anything like that. I just kind of start tucking under like this, and you can see these edges here, and I fold them under, and then I pinch down here. I call these my little jellyfish. And I just try to seam up all the lines so that they look like that. So now it's like a cute little ball, and I just stick it straight on the parchment paper. And then I just continue to do that. I'll just pull, 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 pull until it starts to kind of toughen up, and then I start pinching. Sorry if it's getting blurry. Like pinch to where it's all kind of together there, and then that one's done. We'll do one more. So pull, pull, kind of pull around. I'm kind of pulling around my finger here, and then I just start to pinch. Just like that. If you're pulling and you leave a spot, say like that, with like a hole in it, it will like rise weird. So just make sure they're pretty uniform. And this is why it's important not to have a sticky dough, so that when you're working these rolls, it ain't sticking to your hands, and they're easily worked. Pinching. Okay. And I just do 4 across on my pan. But let's go ahead and do a breadstick here. So I'm just going to roll these a little bit, whatever shape I want, however length you want. You don't want them too long because then they could get hard. And then just work out any little, like how that has that. I might just turn that one over. Start pinching. It's okay if they don't turn out completely beautiful. They're still gonna be good. Okay, so I'm gonna set my roll onto my parchment as well. I'm gonna finish these up and then I'll show you the final product before I stick them in my oven where it should be still warm from when I heated it up earlier. It's not gonna be super hot, but it'll be a little warmer than the ambient air in the house. And I'll show you that before they go in for their second rise. Another method that you could use if the rolling thing is just not working is you could just spread these out like this. Pinch them, kind of spread, and then roll it like that. You're gonna get more of a uniform type roll there. And that's not a seam. It looks like it's a seam, but it's not. It's stuck together. And then just kind of pinch your ends like baby French loaves. If that works easier, then do that method. All right, so here is my finished product. I just spray the tops with a little bit of olive oil. And then I will put a little bit of saran over the top and throw these in the oven. So I'm gonna spray these and get my saran wrap and I will stick them in the oven. I'll be right back. So I've sprayed it and I've laid down one piece of the saran. I just loosely lay the saran over the top of the rolls. You don't want to constrict your dough. So you want it to be able to just freely rise because these need to double in size again, at least double in size. So let me just go ahead and throw this. All I do is I just kind of lay it over the top like that and make sure that it's nice and loose. And then I'm just gonna stick this in the oven. And like I said, that oven is just an ambient temperature. It's probably maybe 68, 70 degrees in there. So I'm gonna let those proof for at least an hour. I will keep an eye on them and I will check on them in about an hour, like I said. And if they have risen twice the size, then we will pull them out, preheat the oven, and get them baking. Let's get our oven set to 400 degrees and I will show you what our rolls are looking like. Alright, so here they are and they have at least doubled in size and they will puff up even more when they go in the oven, but I'm just going to leave this plastic on until the oven is preheated, and then once it's preheated we'll come back and I'll tell you how long to bake them for. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and remove the plastic because our oven is fully preheated. So let's get that off. And let's get these in the oven. We're gonna put these in a 400 degree oven for about 12 minutes. It could be up to 15, but we're gonna set our timer for 12 and see what they look like. Careful not to slam your pan in there. You don't want them to collapse or fall. So, in the oven, set a timer, 12 minutes. Okay, I just checked on my rolls at 12 minutes. They still need a couple more minutes, so when those couple minutes are over, we're gonna pull them out.
What's going on over there?
Alright, so these are all done. They look amazing. They're not perfect on the bread sticks, but who cares about that? I mean, unless you really did care about the aesthetics of what the bread looked like. I don't. They're going to eat the same and they're going to be delicious. And these rolls are perfect, like I said, for sliders, sandwiches, anything you want, just to put on the side at dinner. They're amazing. You could go ahead and brush the tops of these with butter. I don't do that just because I want them to last. I find that with the butter on them, they don't last as long, so I just leave them like this. And then I have my family put butter on them if they want to. And tonight, when it's dinner time, I will take some melted butter with a little garlic in it and maybe a little sea salt and brush the tops of these. Maybe put them back in the oven just to warm them for a few minutes, and they will be amazing little breadsticks to go along with our homemade spaghetti sauce. So that's them, and they look great and they smell even better. So my suggestion would be to let these cool for about 5 to 10 minutes on the pan, just enough that you can get to the point where you can handle them easily, and then remove them from the pan and the parchment paper and put them on a cooling rack. That way they don't start to get they'll get moisture on them, especially on the underneath. They'll start to kind of condensation or whatever. This will start to sweat, and you don't want them to get wet bottoms. So it's best to remove them off the pan while they cool. Alright, so this I'm just brushing on here is just a little butter, garlic powder, and sea salt. Alright, so we're gonna give these a taste test. Let's try that out. So here's my breadstick with the butter on top. Very nice. And we're just gonna try it. I'm gonna try this side. Maybe don't make these. Maybe don't make these because they're so good that you're gonna wanna make them all the time. So if you love bread, maybe don't. These are so good. Definitely try this recipe, guys. Like I said, it's my go-to recipe for rolls. These could double as hot dog buns if you made them. I mean, I think they would work just this size. But these are so good. Give them a shot. I promise they won't let you down.